Hey everyone, welcome back for this week's live Q&A. I have Ian Barnard on the other line, I guess you could say, of this call. So you can't see him right now, but he is here and he's listening. So just before we pop him up on the screen, he's going to do an awesome live demo for us. I just want to do a couple housekeeping things like usual. So if you're tuning in live, let us know where you're tuning in from right now. We won't be able to see your name, but we'll be able to see your comments. And we always like to see that. And as Ian and I are talking, I just ask that you keep your questions for the end. We are going to do kind of a rapid fire round at the end as usual, where you'll be able to ask Ian any questions you want. And we're also going to be covering the questions that were submitted ahead of time. So lots to cover today and a really awesome lesson. The other thing I want to mention is that any resources that we talk about in this video or we're going to talk to you about some free worksheets from Ian, those will all be available to you afterwards. You don't need to ask in the chat where to get them. I'm going to put them all in the notes afterwards and you'll have access. So no worries about any of that. And yeah, again, if you have any questions, just keep them for the end and we will get to you then. So I'm going to get Ian up on the screen here and introduce him to you. Just give me one sec. I'm trying to still navigate this new program. There we go. Hello, Ian. Oh my God, are you frozen?
I'm all right, nearly.
Okay. There we go. You're back.
Okay.
Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So I guess just to kick things off, for anybody who doesn't know you, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you are, I guess?
Okay. I'll start with where I am. I don't know if you can tell from my accent, or you might think I'm from South Africa, but I'm from the UK. I'm from the sort of southeast of the UK. And yeah, I'm, I suppose, a hand lettering artist. I do calligraphy, I do hand lettering, I dabble with typography as well. I spend a lot of time on specifically Instagram, just doing videos of me drawing. I make brushes for Procreate, which is an iPad app. I design typefaces. I design products that help people get, designers get certain effects with their lettering. I have a YouTube channel where I suppose what I like doing is just helping people to learn how to do hand lettering, how to better their lettering, how to, just what I've learned from learning calligraphy, learning lettering. So that's who I am.
Which is precisely why we want you here, because you're an awesome here.
Oh, hopefully.
So how did you start lettering? Like when and how, I guess, is a good question.
Okay, so just a little bit of a backstory. My main work has been for most of my career. I'm now 39 and I was a designer for most of my career from about 99 onwards. But it was only when it was around the time that my second child was born, I left my employed work, went freelance, and at that time I already had a girl as well, had a little boy. And my wife was breastfeeding, and she would have when my when my daughter was born, she watched the whole series of Friends, a whole 10 box set. And this time she decided on Downton Abbey. This is all relevant, by the way. So for that, half an hour, 45 minutes when she was watching that, I wasn't that really interested in period dramas. So I decided to learn calligraphy. For some reason, I have no experience in it. I didn't draw letters when I was a kid. I had no, prior knowledge. And I just got a dummy's guide to calligraphy off Amazon. It was the first thing that came up when I searched it. And I got quite obsessive about it. I practiced every day before I wouldn't go to bed until I'd done that letter I was doing that day. And I just kept on doing it. And when you're learning calligraphy, it's quite small incremental improvements. It's quite hard to see that you're getting better. And so I used Instagram as like a help to see that, if I look back and say, okay, that letter B is getting slightly better. But while I was doing that, I was growing an audience because people liked to see the craft I was learning. The whole handmade thing was sort of coming back into sort of fashion and a lot more people were doing it. So I was sort of riding that wave of, people seeing these videos, loving the sort of satisfying videos of people drawing stuff with pens and stuff like that. And so, I started to get work through it, less on the calligraphy side, more on the sort of hand lettering side. I started to get bigger clients than I was for my freelance design. And so, it became my full-time thing, either working for clients or making products like typefaces and selling those. And then I was able to become a full-time letterer, which is, I think, anyone who loves it that's their ultimate thing. And I'm very blessed that I'm in that position to be able to call myself the dream.
The dream. So you said that was when your second child was born. So how long ago was that?
That was about 5 years. I have to think of how old my son was. No, it's 5. Yeah, so about 5 years ago, sort of 4.5, 5 years ago.
Okay. And so that was when you started calligraphy, but had you been doing hand lettering before that, or just your graphic design?
No, I literally, this was the first introduction to any sort of, because like my handwriting, it still is, calligraphy hasn't fixed my handwriting because there's sort of 30 odd years of bad handwriting to undo. And I was only doing one letter at a time, so I didn't really fix it. But my handwriting is terrible. My wife's is like 10 times better than mine. But through calligraphy, it opened up the door to hand lettering. So once I'd learned it really helped me once learning the sort of script style of copperplate calligraphy, that helped me to then learn like other scripts. And what helped me with the sort of, what we're talking about today, with the sort of sans-serif style stuff, so which is sort of linked in with the sort of serif, was doing typeface design. So they're all sort of intertwined, and one helps you to learn one of the other styles while the other one learns. They're sort of toing and froing of learning something here to help the sort of skill over here.
So I think it's interesting that this is coming up, and I wasn't planning on having this discussion, but it's going there organically. So if you had to nail down what the difference is for someone who knows nothing about any of this, what is the difference between hand lettering, calligraphy, and typefaces or fonts?
Okay. It's good I worked this out because it's quite hard to explain because they all overlap. But to nail it down, there's obviously I can go into a lot of detail, but just like one sentence, calligraphy is the art of writing letters. Lettering is the art of drawing letters, and typography is the art of, I suppose, arranging letters, if you get what I mean. That's like in its simplistic form. Obviously, there's more to it than that, but I think it's just, the sort of writing, the drawing, and the arranging of it, so.
I think where a lot of people get mixed up with that is when brush lettering comes into it. And when you think about calligraphy in terms of like all of the basic strokes, some people consider that drawing as opposed to writing because, people think cursive and they just are writing.
Yeah.
They're doing calligraphy, it's in strokes. So I always find it so interesting to explain that to people. And I think it's you have a blog post on it, right? Or you have something about that I might have seen.
Probably. I put out so much content I can hardly remember where it. But I think because calligraphy and lettering can be quite a blurred line, especially I suppose when it comes to brush lettering, because I suppose the difference is the tools. I suppose with the lettering you draw. For instance, the fat and thins of doing a sort of brush lettering, if you drew it, that would be lettering. If you were using a brush pen, that would be calligraphy. So, brush script is a style of calligraphy. But I can also, for me, I sometimes draw brush script. I can sometimes calligraphy brush script. So you can do it, I can draw copperplate script, but I can also use a dip pen to produce copperplate script. So it depends on the method that you're doing it, because you sort of you do it in a constant stroke when you're doing calligraphy. You just dip it, you make the things, and then you go on to the next letter. Whereas hand lettering, you might sketch it out and go over it again. So yeah, that's the sort of, if that makes sense, that's the sort of difference between them. So
No, it totally makes sense. I like discussing this with someone who actually understands what the differences are, because a lot of people are asking me all the time, and I'm like, well, there's a lot of blurred lines, like you just explained. It's a tough one. But and then I also see people get in like heated arguments about that. So
yeah, I'm not really that. I just, if people enjoy it, it doesn't really, it doesn't really matter. There's some hardcore fans who will, you get their back up. But I'm just happy that people were enjoying doing the craft, because it was something that was forgotten. A bit like sign painting. There was a period of time where people just like bought vinyl signs, and a lot of people lost jobs because they were just producing sort of plasticky, signs, but then it's come back again as well, and the same with sewing, the same with cooking. It's really good that people are actually making things from scratch rather than just buying stuff off the shelf. And for me, I never had being a designer, and I would just spend all the time on the computer. It's nice now that I can make something as a gift for someone, whereas I didn't have that before. And for me, being able to write someone's name on a card that makes it look nice, and people thinking, I don't want to throw away this envelope because it's got my name nicely written. And so for me, stuff like that is really feels really good. If you stripped away everything else, just being able to write someone's name nicely on a card would be great.
Yeah, so I love it. I think that's funny, because I've had this discussion a couple of times. In our first interview with Emma, we were talking about that, and both of us started lettering and calligraphy because we wanted to be able to write people's names nicely on our greeting cards. Yeah. And I think that's a lot of my audience also is the same way. They just like making personalized gifts. So
yeah, definitely.
So I'm going to pop this one question up on the screen here. This is from Cecilia. She asked, how would you describe your lettering style, and how did you find your own style?
I would define myself as the thing is, for me, I don't think I have one style that rules overall. I think there's two types of people. There's people who are happy with one style, right way of working in that, and you can see that quite obviously. There's certain people that have that. Whereas I have like a few styles that I sort of rotate or mix in. So I might have I sometimes just do my script calligraphy. Sometimes I use a Crayola to do sort of similar thing. Sometimes I do the sort of chalk style lettering. Sometimes it's just serif. Sometimes it's like a really bold brush script. And so for me, I've come to realize that I have a very it's based on my personality, where I get obsessive over one thing for a little period of time, and then I move on to another one. But I still might have that, but then I go on to something else, and then I move on to something else. So, but for other people who are wanting to find that one style, what I've seen time and time again over on Instagram is people who can keep up the momentum of sort of posting regularly over a long period of time. And naturally, they will find a style that they like doing that comes out of their work, and they get comfortable with that style. And to find that style, there's a few things. You just have to consistently post and sort of create and post, and it sort of develops over time. But also just trying out, bringing in new styles. You might see an artist that you really like. Don't copy them, completely, but take something, an element from what they're doing, and put that into your work as one of your posts, and see if it fits and works with you. I've done that over time, sort of seen an artist, I think, that the way they've done some of those letters is really good. I'll try it in mine. Looked a bit awkward, so I didn't include, didn't cape with that. But sometimes it was like, okay, a bit of a spin on this has worked. So that's the sort of thing I recommend, to sort of finding your style. But unfortunately, it takes time, and giving yourself like a challenge, like 100-day challenge or something like that, really helps, because that forces you to do something, to come up with something. And then after a while, you look through your feed and you think, okay, there's the way I do certain letters is springing out to me and stuff like that. So
I like your answer about seeing other people's work too, because it kind of leads into our next question. So Serena asked, how do you learn new styles without directly copying someone else's work? And you just nailed it right there. Like you look at other people's stuff, but you don't take the whole thing. You take pieces of it that you liked and you implement them and you try out different things.
Yeah, and another reason, obviously, is one of the main reasons is not to rip off someone else and copy them, but to be able to stand out, to be able to get work doing what as a hand letterer or whatever you want to be, because this sort of niche, or this sort of collection of people, there's quite a lot of people doing it, and to stand out you have to have a different style. You either got to be the best, you got to be like the standard of someone like Suzanne, who was on the other week, where she's just like a monster at getting it, nailing that style, or you have to be different. And to be different is looking at other people and think, oh, how can I change that so it doesn't look like anyone else's? What can I add? Can I use a certain type of brush that no one else is using? Can I use
or a vegetable in your case?
Or a vegetable in your case. Though I don't know if that was sustainable though. But it's that sort of thing where whether you modify a pen so it's like no one else's, and then you use that and it creates a style, people will just flick past if your stuff just like everyone else's. But if you can somehow stand out, that will catch the eye of people wanting to use your services, your work. For me, I suppose I've tried to. I'm always developing my style. I was always trying new stuff, trying to tweak what I do. I think because I position myself in a weird sort of space, as in I just constantly evolving and trying new things, new tech, like the iPad, seeing what I can do with different pens, like you say, with vegetables. I just like trying, writing on completely random objects. That's, I suppose, my style is very experimental, and that's what I've become known for. And just trying to push all the things, push the boundaries of what I can do with lettering, really. So.
Yeah, for sure. That's a great answer. Also, I wanted to mention, just on the topic of not copying other people, have you read the book Steal Like an Artist? I would assume you probably have.
I have, yeah. It's really good. It's been a while since I read it, but it's a really good book.
So if anybody's listening and is wondering what that's all about, that's a great book to read that kind of reiterates what we've been talking about. Not copying people, but everything is a reinvention of something else. And it kind of makes you feel better if you feel like you're ripping people off. But it's just such an interesting take on the whole thing. Yeah.
And I suppose that's it. You take someone, you don't just grab a Rembrandt and then reproduce it. You grab a Rembrandt, add it to what makes you your own personality, and then it produces a completely different thing, even though you're using resources from the past. So, like, for instance, I learn a particular style. I could just do it in that style, but to make it stand out, because like everyone's learning that style, I try and tweak it to make it a bit more who I am. Certain ways I do letters, certain ways I do maybe flourishes or colors I use. So yeah, that's the thing. It's experimental. You won't like hit it straight away. You're not going to like get a formula and like boom, you're going to be successful the next day, or get a load of work in. It's trial and error and just playing around. I've tried loads of styles before, and I've posted it, and I've just thought, or just does, a bit awkward and just doesn't really suit who I am or suit what I do, or maybe how I, push out my work. So, yeah.
But those are important things to realize, and you don't realize those things unless you actually experiment with it. So it's important, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And it's like going through that process. You have to go through the process to be able to learn it, and how to experiment, and how to, push yourself and learn new things.
Yeah. So switching gears a little.
Yep.
Sylvia asked, what was one of your biggest challenges in your career as a lettering artist? It's a tough one.
The reason why I got into type design was because one of my followers kept badgering me to release a font of my hand lettering. And I kept putting off, going, no. And I said, oh, okay, I'll do it. And I did it, and it was all right. It was just like a capital letter one, so it was really easy. And then I did my second one, which was like a monoline script. I thought, yeah, the first one was, it wasn't too bad. The process was quite fairly straightforward. And when I did a joined up script, it was like I'd never had a learning curve so steep, because there's like, I remember the thing about type design is that you're not just putting like a O and an E together once, like you would do someone's name, or or T and an H together once. You're putting a T next to every other letter of the alphabet, and you have to make sure that matches up every time someone types that in. And I was like, and that's a terminology where kerning comes from, and it blew my mind how difficult that was. And I didn't know any of the shortcuts and stuff like that, so I just spent hours and hours on this, and I was just like, this is hard work. This is really like the learning curve was going through the roof, and it's been very beneficial because I've like found shortcuts in the process of doing that, but the learning process was just off the scale. So that was like one area. Another area was probably doing the videos I've done for like some of the stuff I'm going to show today. I did a video every letter of the alphabet and showing how to draw it with just a Sharpie marker. And I think people think I just did it once, but I got through so many bits of paper trying to, because like when you're trying to do it to camera, I think doubt steps in, and I'm just like, oh, I can't do it, I can't do this. So yeah.
Well, I think in those those were the sans-serif ones that you did, right? So those are not very forgiving if you have it off by a little bit. So you got to really get it, and especially if it's on camera, it's got to be perfect.
Yeah, definitely. And another thing was, I got my first like major client, if you want to say. I had to do some. It was for a swimwear brand, and I had to like do lots of different styles around the bodies of the swimmers. Just talking about like be your best and faster and fitter and stuff like that, all around the bodies. But the problem was I only had a print that would print out in my country A4 or letter, the standard US letter size. But my pen was just way too big to be able to do all those many styles. This was before the iPad, which would have saved me a ton of time. So I had to buy a massive print just for this job, because what I had to do was print it out on the bigger paper. I had to get bigger tracing paper. I had to like do all the sketches on the tracing paper, scan it in, adjust it on the computer. Any corrections, I have to go through that process again. And it was really challenging. And then like 6 months later, the iPad came out, and I could have done it there and then on the screen. So yeah, there's bits I've been through, which sometimes I'm glad I've been through because I've really learned a lot through that process. But sometimes technology pops in and I'm like, yeah, you could have used this and it would, saved you about a tenth of the times.
Yeah. But I love that, like, we're discussing those kinds of issues that you've had to hide, because I feel like most people who might be following you have so many followers, they're probably like, oh, he just bangs out a letter and it's done and it's perfect and whatever. But it's really not like that. Like, you got a garbage can beside your desk just full of trash paper that you're never going to show anyone.
I know. And sometimes I think there's like a lot of stuff I don't post because I do it and I like look at it and I'm just like, doesn't look like any, it just doesn't look good at all.
It's not what was in your head.
No, and it just like that won't inspire anyone at all. And sometimes I do I think I posted a few months ago where I tried to use a sort of thick paint marker on a hat, on a baseball cap, and it really didn't go well. I went over it and it was supposed to say flow, but it ended up just being one big blob. And, people really appreciate seeing that someone who's regularly on there like me doesn't always have good days. There are a lot of bad days that go into showing the good days. Because I don't want people to think that it's unobtainable, the level of some of the, letters who may have a bigger following, that I remember when I was just starting out, and there was people who I was following, and I was like, this is just way above where I can get to. And when you actually get there, you realize it's not that hard, and it was just a period of time as you practice. There are some people who are they take hard work and talent to a whole new level. Like Jake Wildman, the calligrapher, is just sensational. I don't have that drive to get to that level of perfection. I just enjoy the level I get to. I try and practice my skills and know my skills, but I think I just don't have that. Some people just have that drive to just absolutely nail it, whereas I'm quite happy in the position I am. So, yeah,
totally agree. So, okay, speaking of perfection, this is kind of the last question before we transition into your actual lesson, and it's a perfect transition. So, Noura asked, how do you get your lines to look so straight and your letters to look so perfect? I think the answer is one word, right? The P word.
Oh, yeah. The thing is, the problem with I've been thinking about lately, because I bang on all the time about practice, is that you can practice wrongly, which is a bad thing to do, because then you could just practice the bad things over and over again. But what I'll come to talk about in a bit, I'll demonstrate in a bit, is that I think I posted about it the other day. There's like three things. There's produce consistency. The reason why things look better than others is because I feel is consistency. So especially when you're doing like script lettering, everything has to be. You look at Suzanne's stuff, and it's her consistency of the letters, of the weight of the letters all over the whole word, and that's the same with any style of lettering. It's the consistency of you're looking like the consistency of the height, the consistency of the weight, so how thick each letter is, and each stem is, and you're looking at the consistency of the width, I suppose, as well, of the letters. So the sort of combination of the width, the weight, and the height. So for me, I always use. I know my videos I sometimes just freestyle, but that's just me. But you should be using guides, and you should be trying to check that the width of your letters is consistent throughout the word or the words. Just looking at it, okay, and even like for me, I don't really do modern calligraphy, which is a very popular style. But even if you're doing modern calligraphy, you can still it's still a case of using guides. Even if you're bouncing letters up and down, you want a consistent bounce, otherwise it looks a bit disjointed. So for me, it's all about working with guides, working with stuff that will just, even when if I'm doing an envelope for someone, I still draw a pencil, like one or two pencil lines. Just otherwise, you see it sort of slightly tail off, where the letters start to, get smaller or get bigger, or they go off angle and stuff like that. So guides may feel restricting, but they're actually something that are really helpful when you're getting your letters consistent. And talking about getting lines straight, actually one thing you can just do is just try over and over again drawing a straight line. There's not much of a technical thing with drawing a straight line, but it's just it's the way you get the pen and just practicing, just getting your hands in that place where it does it so often that the lines become straighter. I don't always draw straight lines.
I love that you're saying that, because last weekend I took Paul Antonio's copperplate workshop.
Okay.
And we did straight lines. Not only did we do them for like 2 hours in his class, but we did them for weeks ahead of time as homework. So he made us go through and draw straight lines every day, lines and lines and lines, and pages and pages and pages of them, and go through and correct them with a red pen. And it's crazy how actually hard that is. And you can't just draw a straight line without ever actually trying to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it just once you can, it's just, what it's like if you drive a car, at first it's just difficult, but the more you do it, you suddenly become aware that you're not thinking of it. or it seems weird, and it was the same with me. It was just because I was just doing it over and over again that after a while I was just like, actually, I can draw a line fairly straight now. Whereas before, when I draw a line, it would go all over the place. But I think, and sometimes it still does, and I sometimes still have my off days. And I know that people, some people might have joint pain and stuff like that, and that really does, can cause the line not to be straight. But don't feel afraid to use a ruler. That's what it's there for. Even if it's just to help you, you draw a faint line and then go over it with a pen. That's okay. It's not cheating using guides and using tools to help you do it. For me, I just wanted to be able to draw a straight line, so I just kept drawing straight lines. So
that's a good answer. I like that.
Yeah. The thing is, it's not glorious. Drawing a straight line is not glorious.
Yeah.
But if you put a lot of straight lines together in a certain way, it produces a load of letters. So the thing is, there's one step on from drawing a straight line, and that's drawing a straight curve. But that, and that's another, and that just becomes, the more you do this, the more you practice, just getting an alphabet that you like the look of and just tracing it and then copying it. I've done a video on that where it's just a case of getting your head and your hand talking, really, and just getting your muscle memory. Just work it like you would go to a gym. If you don't go to the gym for ages, your muscles just, don't do much. And so it's the same. If you just keep practicing, you'll get it, and you can impress your friends with drawing straight lines.
Yeah. Okay, so we're about half an hour in. I think we should actually jump into seeing some of this in action. So just before we get started, though, do you want to talk a little bit about what tools you would be using most of the time, or kind of what your favorite tools are, maybe?
Okay. I am very sucker. The problem is I'm using the iPad a lot at the moment, but we're not going to. I can use that today if you want me to, but I was going to do. I'm still my top tool of all time will never change is a pencil. Pencil and paper is just something. It's just something that won't replace that. It's just so natural. So today I'll be using a pencil paper, maybe Sharpie as well. I do like a Sharpie just because it gives a consistent line, thickness of line, and it's quite black. The black is really black, so it stands out quite a lot, and that's the reason why I used it in those videos that I did, and why I used it as this is what you should use when you're using the worksheets that we're giving away. And the only other pen, probably won't use it today because of the style we're using, but otherwise is a Tombow Funusuku brush pen. I sometimes use that to do to go into sort of more serif letters if I'm doing them small. But yeah, it's just simple paper and pencil, paper and pen, whatever you can get hold of. Really, I don't like putting any because the thing is, because with social media it's open to the whole world. I don't like people to be able to get stuck because they can't get the certain pen they. Most people can get Sharpie markers, and if they can't get Sharpie markers, they can get some sort of permanent marker that is very similar to a Sharpie marker, and everyone has access to a pencil. So I like to make the level of entry to be able to do this as low as possible, so that no one gets put off by it. Paper-wise, I just use whatever I got to hand, really. But when you're using Sharpie markers, and I found Sharpie markers seem to bleed through everything, even if it's bleed through paper. But normally, like a shiny laser printer paper, something that's quite thick, even that, I still have to put something underneath it to sort of catch all the ink running through. I use dot grid paper a lot. That can really help with doing this style of lettering. I won't use it now because I just realised that you won't be able to see it on the video. When we use the video, the dots are just like grey, and on this sort of stream it won't pick it up, so I'll just do it on normal paper. But using something like dot grid or a graph paper will just help you to construct them easier, because you've got lines there. You don't have to worry about freestyling drawing the lines like we've been talking about. Yeah, So I hope
All right,
that's
cool. So I'm going to suggest to everybody to not try and follow along with their tools. They can just watch and listen for now, and this will be available for replay after. So if you want to try out whatever Ian's going to show us, you can do that later. And there are going to be free worksheets, so don't start asking in the comments where they are, because I will give them to you after. So for now, let's just watch and learn and see what this sans-serif is all about.
So there isn't one. There's a way I've put in the worksheets is a way of drawing the letters. There isn't like one, this is how you should draw the letters. There's many ways. So what I'll be showing you today might not, because I'm going to do a bit of pencil work as well. The worksheets are more based on just doing single line Sharpie strokes. So and I know you mentioned about numbers as well, so I'll try and cover that, because that's not something that anyone really talks about, numbers. So, okay, let me just try and get my phone set up. Okay.
So Ian, I'll just the screen is only going to show you right now, but if some questions come up that are relevant to what you're talking about, I'll just yell them out at you. But I'll let you as long as you need to now.
Okay. Just check. Yeah, you see me all right. So I really like to use pencil-wise. Obviously, there's a range of different pencils. I usually like using stuff that's on the B end of the scale, so the softer leads. I don't know why. I just like using it. But what I thought we'd go through first is maybe going through some of the characteristics of, everyone knows how to draw letters. I think, you learn in school, but there's certain little nuances that can make your letters look a bit better. Okay, because I can only see a little square, are both my hands in the picture?
Yeah, if you want to move your paper down just maybe an inch or two, that'd be perfect. Yeah,
I could do it the other way around if that's more helpful. Is that filling up the screen?
More of the screen, so it's up to you. Yeah.
Okay. So I thought we'd start with, we're only going to be looking at like capital letters because of the time frame we got on this, because it would take too long. But I'm going to go through some of, like I say. So for me, I usually use a pencil. I did the Sharpie ones just to show that you could just use a Sharpie marker, and you can get these letters quite quickly using that. But usually I use a pencil, whether this is just a pencil or on the iPad, I usually use their pencil on there, or some of my chalk brushes, which are sort of similar to sort of pencil things. But I usually, because the letters are made up of either, sort of triangles, like the A or the V, stuff like that, or they're made up of squares like the H, the E, stuff like that. And then you've got letters that are made up of circles like the O, Q, stuff like that. Just get me a ruler. And with one thing straight off the bat is that when you're doing, you've got your guides. If you're doing an A that's got a point at the top, that point will go slightly over the line. So there's certain visual tricks that you have to play, because you have to play it on your eye. Even though for me, it was quite hard at first when I was learning this, because I'd work in applications where I like everything aligned and everything to be like the top to be aligned with everything else that's on that line. But when you're doing letters, there has to be certain optical illusions to help it all balance out. So if you're doing a triangle letter like an A and it's got a point at the top, it has to go slightly above the line. So then when it's next to a big, like an H, it doesn't look weird, like it's dropping below the line. It's the same with the V as well. It would be below the line. Stay with the sort of W. Square letters like the H just stay perfectly on the line. But circle letters do similar to what I've just said with the A, is the top and the bottom go below the line, just because of how the shape sits. You've got this sort of extra space either side of where where the curve goes that just needs to be opened out so that when it's sitting.
Is it always letters that are pointed or rounded that are the ones that do that?
Yeah, mainly. I'm just trying to think of anything that doesn't end in a sort of flat, a flat bottom or flat top would normally go above. So majority of these letters, like the thing is, the letters I use, like the V would normally have a flat bottom. It's just that if your style, you wanted the A to have a point on it, then you go slightly above line, not very much, but it's enough to make it way up better against the other letters that are there. So that's just one thing to know about. Just actually, I'm just going to freestyle. Pretend I've got some guides, so I don't have to keep drawing the guides. Another thing is just where you have two lines intersecting. So let's start with the A. So you have your two uprights. So I normally just roughly sketch it out. There's this point here where they two cross, and this is another area of sort of visual. You need to change it slightly. So this width you got here changes slightly when you get to the bottom. So it ends like that one ends there, and this one ends in slightly. So they narrow at the bottom or at the top here. Otherwise, this area here becomes too bold. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
There's just too much weight at this bottom area. It's a similar sort of thing with if you've got a Y, because you've got two parts of it coming in. So this is over exaggerated. So you would just sort of narrow it. You start with the width of all your letters at the top, but as you come down, you slightly narrow it. So when you filled it all in, this area doesn't become a really heavy area of block of color or whatever, of black or whatever you're using. This area here is something that needs to be sort of weighed out. So it's only a slight adjustment, but it just helps your letters to look less, it's all about adding the right amount of weight. So when you've got all the letters together, it looks right. And it just tricks your eye to thinking that it's looking right. So
I would have never known that tip. I would have always thought that it should be the same weight everywhere around.
The reason why I learned this is through doing type design, because I was just like, oh yeah, sure, I just get a bit, and move it a little bit and just put another, duplicate it and put it there. And I was like, well, why is this one looking like really heavy, but the letter T next to it isn't, and it wasn't sitting right. And then I'd look into it more and research it more, and it was like, actually, I needed to look at these areas and make this top bit slightly narrower to even the balance out. So that's one tip, and that refers to wherever you get to, the same thing with the W, the same thing with the V, slightly with the middle of the X. So that's one thing. Another thing is horizontal elements. So I'm talking about something like we have the letter E. So the central bar of the E, if we were just wanting everything to be aligned, we'd put it up against there like that. But the problem is that when you fill it in, your eye looks at it, it looks like this is a bit of an extreme case, it looks like the E is sticking out too far. And that's just how our eyes view that sort of collection of three bars together. A bit like those optical illusion tricks that you sometimes see. And so what you have to do is just bring that back a bit lower than, it only has to be a fraction, but away from the top. So the top goes to a certain place, lines up with there, and the middle one goes back slightly. And that's just another visual reference that will just help with your letters and stop this from sticking out too much. And also another thing is that, so that's the middle of the E there, is making sure that it's not actually on the horizontal. So you either make it slightly lower or slightly higher than the horizontal line you got going across there. And these are all, like I say, all just visual references to trick your eye to thinking it's in the middle or thinking it just helps with the balance of your letters together. That's the same with the H. Another thing is these ones that go horizontally are slightly, this is quite precise stuff, but it's just the horizontal parts of the letters are always slightly narrower in terms of the width of it. So the width of that, I haven't really done it properly here, but the width of that is normally slightly less up the top. So when it's going horizontally, and it's just tricking your eye into making it look like it's all the same width.
That's another thing I would have never known.
Yeah, and it's weird when you find out about it, things you go, oh, I didn't realise. And you take a typeface, one that's on your computer probably, that's been really well thought out and put together, and you'll realise that you look at it and you realise these elements that I've just gone over are in it, that they've made the stem of the E shorter than the rest of them and stuff like that. So it's just little tweaks. I'm not talking, this is not like major stuff that will help make your work just look a bit more consistent, a little bit more properly weighted. So but when I'm just drawing letters, I just sort of go through just drawing some letters and how I go about it. There's a number of ways. There is the way of sort of just drawing like this sort of skeleton and adding weight to that. So I'm just trying to think of a letter that would be good to do. So if we're doing letter B, same sort of thing, going back to what I was just saying, is that if you've got the center of the B there, you want the bottom B the bottom bowl of the B to be slightly bigger than the bottom B, and hitting not the horizontal but just above, or in B's case, just so that you're not left with a topsy-turvy B. So sometimes I draw it out as a skeleton like that, and then what I would do is go either side of it slightly and fill it out. And I'd look at how wide I've made it for the upright stem and say, okay, I want it similar to that, slightly less. So I'd put a horizontal bit there, one at the bottom, and then I'd do that sort of same shape in the middle, because this is where it sort of overlaps. And then I'd have the same sort of thing here. So I just sketch in the lines.
So Ian, you said you learned kind of these little tweaks just from studying typefaces.
Yeah.
So would you suggest to beginners that they maybe find a font of capital letters that they like and kind of go over that, trace it, and notice those little nuances? Or should they try and do it just drawing by hand first and seeing what kind of looks off?
For me, I would trace it. So there's like three stages. There's trace. So just literally, like you were saying, just going over and over doing straight lines. The first one is to trace it. Just ping tracing, just literally going over and over it. It's really boring. The problem is this is quite a boring thing, but if you can do it, it will really improve your skills. So the first thing is to find one you like, whether that's condensed one, whether it's just one you think you're going to use in the work you're doing. For me, I find I keep going back to doing sort of letters that are very, for the space I'm doing, it's like very narrow. So very tall and narrow. So this is what I like a C. That's sort of condensed. Sort of looking one, maybe a bit bolder than that. There's one called Lee Gothic, which is one I sort of always seem to refer back to quite a lot.
Lee, like Lee?
A league, as in like a championship league. I think you can get a free version of it, one of the weights. So find one that you like and just trace over the whole, print out the alphabet and the numbers, just trace over it and just get to understand how the letters are made up as you're tracing it. And you'll realize these things I was talking about of the nuances of each letter. So that's the first step.
You don't want to just trace it and, do it mindlessly. You're kind of studying while you're doing that. That's the whole point.
Yeah, just look at how is that E made up? How is the S shaped? How is looking at the crossbar of the T and how that differs from the downstroke of the T. So just being mindful as you're going over it. Otherwise, you'll just forget. You're just going over it. It's like skim reading a book and not really taking anything in. It's just sort of taking your time, looking at why the letters are shaped the way they are, and you'll get to realize some of these things that some of these little nuances I said that make them up. So that's the first stage, and then the second stage is to reference it. So once you've traced it countless of times, it's up to you how long you do that, is to then put it to one side and use it as a reference. So you can, it's a bit like hand holding. So you're looking at the, letters and then you're just, you're sort of drawing it, you go, okay, that's how wide the top of the T is. And that's how high the top of the T is. And it's, it's stuff like that. So you're not tracing, but you're not doing it completely freehand. And then obviously the third stage is the fact that you can just do it freehand without the reference. So when you're coming to do a piece, you go, okay, I want to do a mixture of sans-serif and some script. I know that this letter looks like this, and I can do that without having to go and search my reference and pick it out and have a look. Or if you're doing, it might be a case you're doing some chalkboard work and you just want to do some letters, how to do them already because you've already referenced it and traced it millions of times. So that's like my way of getting to know a style. It doesn't just have to be the sans-serif one. It can be serif and it can be script as well. But that's one way of doing it that I found really helpful for me in terms of learning a style of sans-serif lettering. So,
do you have other fonts that you like to learn from, or is Lee Gothic kind of your go-to?
At the moment, it is just because whenever I'm doing words on a layout, or maybe a quote or something like that, I can never fit in any other style. It has to be quite condensed. I did make one that I sometimes reference of my own, which is called Bookend, and it's really narrow, like sort of the height of the C is sort of more like that sort of height, just because sometimes you're just really limited on space and you just want to put that in. But another one would be just Helvetica, really. Bog standard Helvetica that's also installed on most, the same. It's similar to Arial, something very plain. Because what happens is that you learn that style, and then you can add your own elements to it. So having that base structure. So I've got this base structure which is based on a font. The problem is, if you're just tracing and just copying a font, is that it has no personality to it. It only has the personality of what that font is. And so once you get to learn it, you can then, okay, I can now add some sort of serif lettering to it by just adding some feet to it, and I can bring this down and add that to it and totally transform the sort of lettering just by adding some elements to it. And that's the difference between just sort of, doing it and then making it your own, is adding your personality onto those letters that you've learned.
Right. And I think it's really important too to learn those sans-serif ones really well, because if you start putting, decoration or any extra details on top of a letter that the foundation is not built properly, then you're kind of, just going to muddy everything. Yeah.
So, because for me, it's sort of like, I'll start off with, I roughly lay out words just by their skeleton, I'm doing a word, and then I decide, okay, what would this style suit the best? I do a lot of quotes on Instagram, and so I think, okay, will this suit a serif or sans serif? So then at this stage, I have the choice of doing both. So, okay, I'm going to start doing a serif one, so I can just start to add little terminal bits to it. But I think, okay, it's a bit too thin, so I can then start fattening it up like I would do if I was doing a serif letter, sans serif letter, but just, sort of adding those elements onto it. And so, but it all starts with that, base structure. And, obviously when you're doing a skeleton one, you're not having to worry about the weight, but you are having to worry about the fact that the sort of horizontal is still slightly off. You're still worrying about, not worrying, sounds a bit weird. You're still concerned with making sure that the horizontal stems of like the F and the E are in a bit. You still have those things that you have to be conscious of. But then, there I can now, if I was wanting to do a sans serif one instead, I just start drawing lines either side to give it weight. And I think with the sans serif one, what's great is that once you have that structure, not only is it, adding different terminals, whether you turn it into a serif letter or whether you turn it just, add some detailing, sort of like flares or whatever that may be, is that you can add elements inside it as well. So you do the outline, and then you can have, circles going in it. Because it's so bold, it can contain those, or you might want to add a little shadow to it. And, that letter that started out as just a plain letter can now be really playful and have a bit more character to it. So I think that's what I really love, is that with a sans serif character, you can add all these elements in it. With a serif character, it's more about the sort of terminal, it's about the, what you do with the parts of the serif that give it more interest, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
So, I think there's just lots you can do, but what I like giving people is the foundation to build out upon it. They decide what bits to add onto it. I'm just giving them the sort of like, it's like, when you buy a car, you can buy the bog stand one, or you can buy the, top of the range. The only difference is just adding elements on top of it. And that's all you're doing, is just adding to the base model and just making it look fancier and fancier as you go up. So.
Yeah, totally. So I think that's like such a good starting point for people. Like, and I think it'll probably make a lot of people feel a lot better that it's not cheating to trace a font when you're learning. Like, I think it's a really good way to study. Yeah.
And like I was saying with the work, because that's someone else's work, the font is. And so all you're doing is, you're taking that, and then what you want to do is add your, Becker personality to it. That will make it stand out. if you just do that standard font, it will look like a standard font. But once you take it and add your own personality to it, that's when it really comes to life.
Yeah.
And let me go on to the S, because the S is like one of those characters. Whenever I draw an S, people are like, I can't draw an S. It's just like the one letter, or there's a few letters, but it's the main letter that people really struggle with.
That's actually what I was going to ask you to finish off the lesson with.
So tips for the S, to practice doing it, I just draw 2 circles. So it doesn't matter what size or shape they are, or it does matter what size. So you'll draw sort of 1 circle, and then below that, joining up to it, you draw another circle, but this one just needs to be slightly wider. So you're drawing like an 8 to start off with. This is the sort of foundation of it. But what you're looking for is, because when I first saw an S, I thought it was symmetrical, as in terms of you could turn it upside down and it'd be exactly the same looking S. But the problem is it isn't. It's actually bottom heavy to stop it looking like it's going to, because if you make the top the same as the bottom, with your eyes again, it looks like it's falling over because it's top heavy. So you just want to make the top slightly narrower than the bottom. So once you've got these 2 circles, what you then do is, say we're doing one that's got a bit of a weight, you do a slight diagonal on there, or it could be horizontal if you wanted, and similar at the bottom. That's where your letter is going to start and finish. And then it's just putting some reference points in a similar distance around. And then this middle part here, the sort of spine of the main S here, is where you join up the 2. So if I put a line there, we're just drawing that sort of shape. I suppose it looks like a bit like a U, I suppose, a bit like a magnet. Yeah, if you sort of cut it in half, you're drawing like 2 very similar shaped U's or N's. And as you can see, that bit at the top is slightly narrower, because if I turn this paper upside down and you look at the same S, it looks like it's got a big head, or it's just a bit, what's going on? It looks a bit weird. So having the top half slightly smaller, and also making sure that it's equal to where it is at the bottom. Otherwise, it looks like it's falling forwards or it's falling backwards. So, but it's drawing those 2 circles and making sure that there's these reference points for you to then sort of, a bit like dot to dot. You can then just draw the lines to join up all these circles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. Super helpful.
I'll draw it again, just and do sort of a single weight one. So you're just looking for 2 ovals, really. Because if you do circles, it's going to be a really high S. So it's normally two ovals, drawing a letter 8. Have a starting point and an ending point, and then doing like a diagonal line across the center, and then you just draw around the curves until you join up with that line. And same here. I think we get worried. We try and draw the S in one big shape, but if you break it down, into these 2 halves and these circles, and just plot out your points, you can then create this smooth looking S. And then the same thing. You can have a sans-serif. You can have your mono if you want, and then you can start adding elements into it, making it look more interesting. Then you can add a bit of weight to the middle if you're just doing a serif one.
You make that look so easy.
I think it's just breaking it down. I think it can be really scary, and it was for me. It was really scary until I broke it down for me and how my brain works. And I was like, okay, I can draw a rough, oval, and I can draw another one. I can draw, most people can draw an 8. Just making, if you have 2 guidelines, it helps if you have a couple of guidelines there. You draw one circle to the edge of the guidelines and one circle slightly in from the guidelines, making sure they meet at the middle. And it's just point at the top, point at the bottom, finding there's a central line there. And then just you can make yourself a dot to dot if you want. If it's called dot to dot in the US.
We call it connect the dots.
Connect the dots. There you go. Make your own.
We do in Canada, we call it that, but I would assume it's the same in the States. Yeah. If anyone wants to correct us, feel free in the comments.
Yeah. So create your own, just going along the lines there until you get to the central line. So you're just following the curve you made, and the same the other side. And as soon as you connect all those dots up, you've got a nice flowing S. So, I think it's just demystifying how that's constructed that can sometimes oh yeah, I get it now. Totally. I think that was what it was for me. It was like one of those moments where you're like, oh, I get it now, and I can draw after all these years. So that's the. Is there any other letters that people have struggles with?
I think S is the main one, and I mean, I'm going to pop myself back on the screen here in a second and show the worksheets that you're giving everyone, because they break it down. They're exactly.
Yeah. It might not be the same as that, because on that I'm just showing people how to draw it in just as few strokes as possible. This one obviously is done with a pencil, but here's the reference. Take that as a reference of trying to do that if you want to use a pencil, because this one which sort of breaks up, and then you decide whether you keep it as a single weight or whether you turn it into a sans-serif or whether you turn it into a serif. And if you want to change how wide it is, if you wanted a narrow one, it's just a case of changing how the ovals are, really. So if you make them very narrow, do your when you join up your dots, the S becomes very narrow as well.
I think it makes it so much easier when you think about changing those ovals instead of changing the letter itself. Just a weird mental block. So,
you just, okay, I want my letter, because you've done the rest of the letters, you've done your T and you've done your E. That was easy. And then you come to your S and you're like, oh no. But if you've done those few, it's going to be roughly that wide. You just think, okay, maybe draw the slightly narrower one and then do the bigger one. You can then just do the same sort of formula. And then, you can, if you want to, it doesn't have to stop there. You can start down here. So you can have a slightly, and then you've done it, and it's not been as hard as you thought it was going to be. I think just remember that, get your letter 8, and then you just use it as a guide to, you put your start, end point, and middle point, and you just connect it together, really. So I say just really, once you get into the practice of it, you'll realize, oh, okay, yeah, it's just the case of getting those initial shapes in the right position, and using them as a guide to get it done, really. So
yeah, for sure. So people are tossing some other letters in the comments here, but I think we should probably wrap up the lesson part, because we're already over an hour in this conversation.
Oh, sorry, I never got onto. I'll do one number quickly.
Oh, right. Okay.
Because I never got onto numbers. So I'll do one number. Obviously, we've seen it. We can do the number 8 there, but like the number 5, which is can sometimes be quite hard. I know number 3 could be quite hard, but number 3 is a similar sort of thing. You know, it's a similar sort of way you can do the S, but you're just moving around where your end and start points are. You know, the 3, obviously, if you're doing a single stroke, is just a quick joining those circles up, and then you just, you know, make it wider. And again, it's, you know, it's those visual corrections of the top is slightly smaller than the bottom, so it doesn't look like it's top heavy. So, and you know, just use that sort of similar sort of system when you're doing like the 5. So the 5 has a, you know, has a circle or an oval, depends on what style you're doing. So that's the rough 5. You sort of got like a upside down L shape and then a circle, and then you're just like, okay, where do I want to end? So I want to end there, and then I bring out the top, and there's my 5, and then I can just fill it in again, add it some weight, and this top bit doesn't go whenever there's the same sort of thing with the line that was, you know, going below the line. The circle sort of sticks out a bit with the top half of that 5, and the same at the bottom there. So it just, otherwise it will look like it's top heavy again. So there you go. That was just a quick run through of a couple of letters.
And I think the other, like, if people are going to be looking up a font to study them, it's worth typing out the numbers and studying those too, of course. So
yeah, definitely. It's just whatever they see that they like the look of, just use that as a reference, and just think of it as your, you know, this is if you were cooking, it'd be like, okay, I've got my mince or whatever it might be, or my chicken. You know, chicken on its own is quite bland, but once I add all these other elements into it, you know, once I get that main ingredient in there, if I just had all the other ingredients and no chicken, I'd have a bit of just like a gloopy mess and nothing for it to stand to. But, you know, it's just having that base. May not be interesting, you know, as you draw out. It's got no thrills, but once you've got it in your head and, you know, your hands getting used to it, then you can just add all these elements onto it, and just really improve. I suppose it's just really improving the consistency of your lettering.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so I think maybe just one more question while you have the camera on your hands, because we got a lot of people asking about how you kind of start when you're doing a layout or a composition. So I know you have some really great kind of guidelines for that too, that you sell, right? Those are for sale?
There will be for sale at the end of the week. So if you're using an iPad or you have access to Photoshop and Illustrator, I've got me and fellow letterer Stefan Kunz have a pack called Grid Builder. So it's loads of different size grids that you can put together to create a structure to your, you know, maybe you're putting a quote together. It means that you've got those guides already there. You know, they're sort of like a sort of oval type shapes, or they've got one where it's bigger at the sides than it is in the middle. And so you can put it together, whether you're using Procreate, whether you're using Illustrator or Photoshop, and you want to print it out and you use it, you know, underneath some paper. You can make you know, sort of bespoke grids using it. So, and it just, you know, and also on my website I've got some free brushes for Procreate where you got the dot grid, so you can put that over, so you can do it on the do it on your iPad if you've got an iPad, and also sort of like, you know, diagonal lines if you want to do scripts and stuff like that. So I've got lots of free stuff out there. If I didn't have to worry about my mortgage and, you know, supplying food for my family, I'd try and give everything I could away, because I just love to be able to share.
But that's why we're here now. Ian, I think we just lost your sound. give it one more second and see if it goes back in
So
here.
what I did with that was just sort of like I think about where I want the main elements of the words to go first. So I normally like write it out. So the quote was too tired, no, too inspired. Keep getting the wrong way around because I'm tired. To be tired. So I think about, okay, what are my main words here? Tired and inspired. So I want them to be the main focus. These are just sort of like sub words that need to go in between it. So for this one, I wanted it to, for some reason, I was doing sort of like I don't know whether it was because Star Wars stuff's out at the moment, but you know, at the beginning sequence, they got the words fading off into the distance. And I was like, I wanted to try and do that sort of style. So I was sort of like getting my guidelines ready, you know, putting a sort of horizontal line so that helps me with consistency. Having a central line as well, that helps, because what a good way of doing it is like, so this word here needs to be tired. So it's 5 words, middle letter is R. So I know that if I start, I didn't do that on the video because sometimes I just freestyle, and I apologize for that. I start with the R in the middle and then I bridge out to the other letters. It's like literally the beginning bit is the roughest bit where I'm just trying to get my letters down onto the paper. And then it's harder when you've got words that are longer. So inspired, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So the middle is just in between P and I. So if I know P is going to be there, get the S in there. And obviously, sometimes it just doesn't work and I have to redo it because like an I is much, the way I've chosen to use is much narrower than all the other letters. So that's going to make a difference to my spacing. So that's like first draft, and I might, you know, add the other words in roughly. And then what I do, that's like round 1. Round 2 would be then to sort of roughly fill out the weight of the letters. I do this because sometimes it's easier to see. You want to see the sort of weight, filled in weight of it to see how it's balanced. So I just like do like scribbles. And then once I've, you know, gone through all that, that's like round 2. And then I'm just refining it. You know, sort of doing those edges, cleaning it up a bit. And once I get to a stage where I'm happy with it, I then go over the top and do a sort of neatened version with a pen. Most of the time nowadays I use the iPad, but you know, it's just getting it to a place where you're, you know, use this as a rough guide and then get to a place where you can then put something else over the top, and then you can get your pen, you know, and draw over that and finalize your piece, whatever you're going to use it for. Take it onto the computer, turn it into a product, you know, a piece to go on something like Etsy or something. Yeah, so that's okay. So, but you know, like I said, I would, you know, with this I wanted to add a shadow. So I pick a reference point, how deep I want the shadow. I'll just point it towards there, really. Oh, a bit lowery. But it's all, you don't want to, sometimes I see people trying to be too neat straight off the bat. Literally, the messier the better. Sometimes I do thumbnails if I've got lots of ideas and I don't know which one to choose. You know, I think, oh, I'm going to have a bigger word down here and a small word there and so on like that. But it's all about being rough and then just iterating those roughness. It's like tidying up a little bit, rather than going, you know, straight from point A to point B, you know, in one step. I think, you know, the rougher you can be, the better end result, really. And just tidying up, because it's like, oh, there's quite a big gap between those letters. I might then say, actually, I want to thicken those letters up a bit. Yeah, I might want to add something inside it, or you know, stuff like that. Or I might want to turn this into a serif one. So I add all those terminals. And by being rough, you don't get pressures about it, and you can just keep on going, and then until it's ready, until you're happy with it, really. And just
awesome. That's super helpful. So to anybody, I would definitely recommend, if you're feeling kind of uncreative with those layouts, the ones that Ian's going to have on sale, I'll definitely link to those in the notes when this is all said and done. But that's such a good overview to just kind of draw out the shapes first. I think that's super helpful.
Yeah, I think, just guide to your friends. I used to think it was like really restricting, and I was just like, I'd try and draw out some words, and it would be like, they'd be like topsy-turvy, they'd go like on a wiggly line, and they wouldn't be consistent. Whereas, just making sure you've got the guides to work to will just help to, just make it look nice and make it more, just fit together well and hold the piece together well. So I think obviously that I've done there is just the sans-serif script. You can still use those guides using, making sure that, use that as a baseline, use that as an X height, and use that where your ascenders go, and then maybe have an extra line where you want your descenders like G, Y go, but just making sure that you're keeping a consistent look with the word. So you have the consistency of the word, and then you have the consistency of the whole piece coming together as well. So.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to put my face back on, and I'm going to show these worksheets that you're giving away to people and let everybody know where they can get them. So I've got them printed out here. You might have heard my printer while we were talking. But this is what the sheets look like from Ian. So those are going to be available right away after this is over. And if you want the link to it, here, I'll just pop this in here right now. So it's going to be at thehappyevercrafter.com/Ian-Barnard. Barnard.
Oh. Is that all right?
I think it's so funny because, I can ask you how you say it, but I don't have an English accent, so.
I don't know why it's so hard. It's like farmyard, Barnard.
Yeah.
But I think it must be not a very common surname out there. So. No,
I don't think so. Okay, so I, as you were talking there, I told people they could submit their questions. So we've got a couple questions. We'll do like a lightning round, and then we'll wrap up and just kind of tell people where they can find you. So we had some people, first of all, wanted to tell you that someone said you were delightful comparing your lettering to chicken. They really like that. And someone else said they have a bunch of your grid guides already, and they're very helpful. So that's
brilliant. Great. Yeah, one of the because we. It's been because I love making stuff that helps people, because like with my typefaces, it's like a finished product, and so I enjoy making it, but I enjoy more making stuff that helps people out, because this stuff is just like when I posed the question on Instagram, what do you struggle with the most? One of the main thing above all was consistency, and hopefully having these grids will help with part of that. Having consistent height of your letters in a consistent composition. So, but I need to give a shout out to Stefan as well, because he's got because we did this together and it was his grids. He's got like purpose built grids as well, which are really useful for people to get into sort of putting their words into. It just builds confidence for people to help them, because it can be just daunting when you've got you've got this quote you really want to put together. And you're like, I don't know how to. And, I was stuck like that. I just didn't know where to start. And sometimes having these together, whether it's Stefan's ones or the ones we've made together, it just helps you alleviate that sort of panic and worry when you come to do it. And you can just put them together and move them around and adjust them to fit, to help you create it, really.
Yeah. And actually, Stefan, did you say it's Stefan? I always thought it was Stefan.
It is Stefan, but I keep calling him Stefan. I've known him for so many years, I keep calling him the same thing. Stefan.
So he'll be on here too, so that's awesome. I'm sure he'll be talking more about those grids. Okay, so we've got a couple rapid fire questions. The first one is, how has the iPad changed the way you approach your lettering?
So the iPad has definitely been a major game changer for me, because the thing is, I work, apart from me writing either someone's name on their card or writing on an object, most of my stuff is digital, whether that's doing some stuff for a brand. It would be, if I'm doing stuff for a brand, it's a social media post, it's all digital. If I'm doing stuff for a logo, it ends up being digital anyway. So having that bit of technology that just means I can do it straight on there rather than doing it on paper, doing it on digital, then takes out one of the steps. What does it really help me with is that if I've got an object, like I've got like a motorcycle helmet, it's really tricky to mock up what the lettering is going to look like on a bit of paper, because you can't, it's hard to, unless you're really good at sketching, it's hard to know how it's going to look. Whereas the iPad, take a photo, draw on top of it, on the iPad. So that has quickened up that process, because I do sort of drawing on violins. That's another thing that, can stand you out, drawing on random objects. But that's been really helpful in how to mock up my lettering. And also the same with doing murals for lettering murals. I could take a picture of it and then I could draw straight onto the wall on that picture. So it's definitely have been a really, because I was umming and ahhing for ages. I didn't get one for when it first came out, I was like, shall I? Because I tried it in the store and they only had, I think it was called Paper 53, and I wasn't that impressed with it. I thought this is nothing like what it's like with a pen and pencil. And then Procreate came out, and it was so easy to use, and the quality was so good at how it was replicating it. And the fact that I could just travel and I had all my pens with me in one place was just revolutionary. I wish I could get sponsored by Apple, so that would. But and it meant that I got to do a workshop at Apple, and it's opened up a lot of doors for me, because I've used it a lot. The only bad bit about it is that I recommend people don't that they do off on paper with pen and ink regularly. Otherwise, because there's so many tools in the technology that help you, that you can become lazy. And I found that in myself, that my skills can become lazy if I don't do it analog. Technology is really impressive at it, because it has a setting which is a bit like auto tune, where it will just make your curves really smooth. And then, then I go and try and draw it on a bit of paper, and it's wiggly. And I'm like, what's going on? I drew it on the iPad. Why can't I draw it on a bit of paper? But so, it can make you a little bit lazy in terms of your skills. So always remember, analog is at the forefront, will always be the place where, your head and your hands will, be in perfect harmony. The iPad does a really good job, but it does stuff for you, which is the bad side of it. So
Totally agree. Okay, another one here we have, what kind of pencil do you prefer?
I'm not that fussy, really. As long as it's a 2B or 4B, I can have any make. I really like these. Can you get a Faber-Castell in Canada? I like these jumbo ones just because because they're sort of more of a, pencils are quite narrow actually. And in terms of a lot of the brush pens I use, or the Sharpie markers, it's a bit more in terms of that sort of size. So I quite like the jumbo pencils, but it has to be soft. 2B, 4B, 6B. For some reason, I'm just not a big fan of the sort of the other end, the H's. They're just too harsh for me. So.
Well, and you can't replicate the light up and hard down and stuff.
No, it just seems to be one shade. And I'm sure some people prefer that, but for me, it's all about soft pencils, I think.
Okay, cool. And then one last question. A lot of people are saying they don't have questions. They're just really happy with everything they've learned already. So we must have covered it. But one other person asked, what lettering books do you recommend? Do you have any kind of go-to Bibles?
I should have researched that. I completely forgot to. The thing is, I'm moving. I've got this tiny little office, which used to be, because I've got an old house, used to be the outside toilet back in the day in the turn of the century, last year. Not last year, last century. And I'm moving, and all my books are all over the place. But books I really recommend are there is one, the Custom ABCs of Lettering by Evan Castell. Oh, I can't remember what his name is, but it's something like that.
You can, when I post this video, I'll put the resources in there anyway.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
You can get the name.
I'll try and get the name. Or Drawing Type by Alex Folks. That's quite good because it mentions in the back about that method. It has actual alphabets that he recommends, and you can use that tracing process in the back. So it's like already there, and the book is filled with examples of people's work that you can actually. I used it when I was first doing sort of hand lettering in terms of using some of the styles I've seen in that book. And one of those styles where I sort of used it but made it a bit more my own got me a job with my first big brand client. So it's that experimentation that, it might be not many other people are doing. Well, then, because brands are after something different. If you're interested in working with brands, they're after stuff that's different. They're not after stuff that, is, super, super brilliant. Because the reason why I don't post much, because my Instagram feed is like my portfolio. I find that's more of where people are than they are on my website. That I don't really post much on my calligraphy because they're after the sort of hand letters style. So if it's different, the designers from agencies will be following you, on Instagram, looking around for a specific hand letter style. And so what you want to do is stand out from the crowd. And as I said in the previous thing, do that. And they might say, actually, I really like this person's style, work with what the brand's brief is. And then they get in contact and say, we want to do some custom hand lettering. So that's a little bit of a business thing if you're looking for getting work with agencies or brands and stuff like that.
Yeah, and actually one other question has come up and it kind of fits in with that. So is that what your favorite kind of thing to do is? Or if you could do only one type of job for the rest of your life, what would it be?
I think what I really enjoy doing, but it's not paying in a way, it's like doing YouTube because I really love, what's weird is I'm like an introvert, but I like doing stuff to camera, and I like being able to share my knowledge. But obviously I have to earn some money at the same time. And YouTube, even though I've got I'm like just past 50,000 subscribers, I'm still only earning $60 a month through like the AdSense. I've only had like one sponsor video, so it's still in its infancy. But I love the community aspect of people learning from that, being able to just, give out. So my ideal thing is being able to be paid to either do YouTube and like Instagram and stuff like that and Facebook, just pushing stuff out, the stuff I'm doing now, but being paid for it, a bit more. I get a couple of, sponsored posts, but it's not something that's my main income. And I'd love to just be.
You just want to be able to do whatever you want and get paid for it.
Yeah, I just love to post every day. It'd be my job. I do get here and there, I get little glimpses of what that could be like with because I've done some stuff with Skillshare and I've done some stuff with Adobe, but it's like few and far between. I'd love to be able to be just someone who can just, share my knowledge, out there and just be paid to do it, I suppose. Awesome.
Yeah. Okay, so just wrapping things up then, what is kind of new and exciting in Ian's world? Like what's coming up someone asked when your book is going to be out, but.
I'm coming sort of July time, I teamed up with Amanda O'Neill, and she's helping me because I'm terrible at putting courses together, but she's helping me out putting the course together. So that's really good. So I've got that coming out in a few months' time with my favorite pen, which is the Tombow one, looking at the style I learned with, which was the copper plate script, but doing it with a brush pen because I love the dip pen, but I am the messiest person ever. And so I love doing it with that really narrow brush pen because I can get a sort of similar style, not as good, but I get a similar style without the mess. So it's the pen I use, apart from the pencil, it's the second pen I use the most. And that's the thing I use to write on the cards, like I was saying earlier. It's the thing I use if there's two reasons I use it. One, to write names on cards, and the second one, if you got like a tub of
and see all these jars behind me? Those are all Tombos.
It's hard. I get through so many of them, but they are because they're so narrow. I can get some really fine hairlines, and I can write that sort of copper plate style with them. And also, they're really good at doing a brush script style one for like logos, and for it's what my first lettering mural was done based off of a small sketch using a Tombow. So I always start doing it because I have a lot of control within that sort of small space. I have to refine it a lot, but it starts off in terms of like whether it's a logo or whether it's a lettering piece, it starts off like that. So
you're doing a copper plate style course with Amanda.
Yeah,
anything else up on the radar that you're allowed to tell us?
I think got this thing on Friday, or hopefully Friday when we're releasing these grid builder, because it's just been 100 people who got the beta testers have just been really happy with them, and it's built their confidence, and that's really good for us to see. Other things coming up, which me, Stefan, and James Lewis, I don't know if you know James Lewis, we're trying to meet up and do something together. So in sort of London, so we're trying to do that. I'm trying to once I've moved into my new studio, I'm trying to push out more content to YouTube so people can go there and learn. I'm just trying to push out more content for people to enjoy and to learn. There's so many people out there who want to do what I do, and I'm happy to share it. I'd like to do more sort of lettering murals as well, because the thing is, when you're stuck in your office on my own, I have my family, which is really good, but sometimes I just like being with other people, other creatives and stuff like that, and that's what sort of either speaking or doing workshops or doing lettering murals sort of opens that up to me. So just getting out to see other people who can be helping my advice. And also I need to give if you don't mind, give me a quick shout out to my podcast as well, which I do with 3 other people, the Honest Designer one. So if you're a freelance designer, we do a podcast at the honestdesigners.com, which helps. We just talk about the highs and lows of being a freelance designer, or going freelance, or having your own design sort of business, or looking at creative block, or looking about the sort of mental health of sort of creativity and being in the creative industry. So
awesome.
Check out that.
Yeah, for sure. So there's your podcast, and then where else can people, what's the best place for people to follow you? Your YouTube channel or Instagram?
Instagram and YouTube, to the main one. So Instagram and YouTube is just Ian Barnard. Search under my name there is probably the easiest thing, or just at Ian Barnard. And it's and just if you want to find, I'm on Facebook as well, but I use similar content on Facebook as Instagram. So and then Twitter, I'm on there as well. I can just search under Ian Barnard as well. So
awesome.
I'm usually there every day. So trying to post stuff. So something, I try and post stuff that's either helpful or entertaining, or both. So follow along, and I try and respond to people who ask me questions as well. So I'm always in the in the the DMs of Instagram trying to help people out with their work and stuff like that. So
very cool. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much, Ian.
No, thank you for having me.
Probably got a lot of value from this. So if anybody didn't catch where to grab those free workshops or worksheets, it's just thehappyevercrafter.com/Ian Barnard, Ian-Barnard. And I'll put that in the notes, and we'll put this on YouTube and everybody can watch it. And Ian's in the group too now, so he'll be able to see your comments if you guys are leaving anything.
Yeah, ask me any questions and I'm happy to give any advice and feedback and stuff like that. So
that is awesome. All right, well, I'll let you go. I think it's getting late there now, eh?
Yeah, sorry, it's getting quite dark now because it was just at the end of the day. So the light sort of keeps changing. So.
I'm getting these lights, like the sun is setting here in my face right now. So, all right, I think we've done our time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on the show, and thank you to everyone for posing questions and hanging around. And hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, of course. All right, we'll talk to you later, Ian.
See ya.
Okay, bye.